there yet. I'm not Paul. I'm Rob. Yeah. So yeah, we slightly deceived you. There was a change in program. See your account manager for a refund if you're not happy with the results today. Now, Paul and I switched out the session. So my name is Rob Nolan. I'm a solutions architect in our DoD team. And I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about AWS Outposts and some hybrid architecture that we're hoping to help you all build. I realize I'm probably right in between you and booze, so I will try to make this as brief as possible. Yeah, so let's get into it. So the need for AWS on premises is something we're hearing more and more today from customers. They really enjoy the ease of use, the agility, elasticity, the consistency of deployment when you're using AWS in the cloud, but there are workloads sometimes that need to still run on premises for latency reasons or other, maybe you're still working on your strategy to migrate into cloud and you want to run a hybrid, but you want to have a consistent deployment and management strategy. So we'll talk a little bit about that need. We'll introduce you to what Outpost is and what it isn't. We'll talk about getting started with Outpost once we do release it later this year. Some of the prerequisites, we'll have a couple of architecture slides here for you to take a look at so you can actually see and visualize how we're going to move traffic in and out of your Outpost to your local network. And we'll wrap it up, and if you need to talk to me afterwards, I'll be outside to answer any questions. So like I said, customers are building every day on AWS, over 1 million active users on the platform today across 21 global regions, 66 availability zones. And we're continuing to grow that. We've got 4 regions announced in the next year or so. So, we're really seeing lots of tremendous growth with people coming to AWS and building. And we give you that broad set of services, right, that you can use to customize everything to your exact need. One of the things I love to point out is if you look at this little blue box down here in the lower left, right? I work with a lot of public sector customers. That's the box that we're usually talking about, infrastructure and storage. But when you look at the breadth of the platform that we're offering you, there's really a lot of advantages you can take from using all of these managed services and focus on building and fulfilling your mission rather than configuring compute, right? But even these services, sometimes we need to have them closer to us in order to fulfill our mission or to access data or keep a $20 million machine from melting potentially, right? If we're going to run the control software on there. The forecasted global spend for cloud for this year is $210 billion, but that's about 10% of the overall global IT market of almost $2 trillion, right? So if you look, there's over 75% of enterprise applications are still running on premises today. And so we recognize that customers need help. They want to take advantage of what we offer in cloud, but they need it closer to themselves, right? So you have traditional enterprise apps that maybe you have a large data footprint with data gravity, right? That keeps you local there on-prem. You need low latency either for manufacturing and control purposes, or maybe you're doing something with healthcare. And you have a lot of local data processing applications where, again, time is critical, right? So this is what we're trying to address. Across all different verticals in public sector and in the commercial space, we're seeing people with different use cases like telco or high throughput networks, where we're trying to do things like network function virtualization, right? If I have users having to have that round trip to the cloud and back, that can sometimes add 25, 30 milliseconds just because of geographic latency. So we want to avoid that. We want to get that cloud deployment capability, but we want to avoid that. Or high frequency trading platforms, very similar use case, right? The faster you can make a decision, the better your outcome might be. Industrial automation, I kind of made a joke about it, but it's true, right? If I have a $20 million machine on a factory floor and I write custom control software for that machine and I can't shut it down in 50 milliseconds or less, I have a $20 million brick. But if I have the power of the cloud inside of my facility, I can iterate on that software that I use to control that machine, record the data, record the telemetry, and be able to control it right there on premises. And some of the other use cases here, kind of similar, right? I want to have everything as close as possible to the compute, as close as possible to the user, so I can get that the fastest results possible. So some of the requirements that we're being asked for when we bring AWS on premises, people don't want a boiled down version of the cloud in a box, right? They want the same experience that they get today, but they want to have it in their data center. So we're going to offer you we want to offer you the same programming interface. It's AWS CLI, SDK, console. All of our services, we're going to bring them to you as they run in the cloud. We're not going to give you a different version of it that requires a different deployment framework. We want you to be able to monitor and automate things and continue to operate your cloud environment the same way you would if you were running it in one of our facilities with the same performance. And so that's why we came up with AWS Outposts. Outposts is the same AWS designed Nitro infrastructure that we run in our facilities today. So if you're not familiar with Nitro, I would highly suggest either come see me after and I'll direct you to some resources, or just take a look at the Nitro, just search for Nitro reInvent last year. The sessions on that are really remarkable. This is custom designed hardware that we're using to completely change how the hypervisor works inside of AWS to add better security and higher performance. All of these outposts are going to be an extension of us, right? So when we put this in your data center, you're going to be connecting back to the same control plane that runs the rest of the EC2 services in region. So when we add an update to Nitro, if we see hardware issues or anything like that, that's actually being monitored by us, and we'll inform you via the same channels we inform you today, via CloudWatch or some other method. Single point of service and support. So this is a service that we offer. This is not us selling you hardware. This is us giving you EC2, but in your data center instead of in our data center. So the idea is that I build, I develop, I iterate on my workflow or my workload and my software, and when I'm ready to deploy and I need to be as close as possible to my users, I deploy the exact same way I would deploy to any other availability zone inside of a region, but the control plane commands the outpost to actually start up that instance locally. So build once, deploy anywhere. Your developers don't have to change their workflow. They don't have to use a different API. They can continue to use whatever tools they like to use to interact with us, whether that's CloudFormation or another tool like Terraform, Ansible. You'll be able to use the same SDKs and CLIs that you're used to using today. Again, like I said, this is managed as a service, right? So we're going to alert you with instance health monitoring the same way we do today with your AWS EC2 instances. We're going to give you patching the same schedule we patch our stuff on, right? You're going to have the ability to have the same resilience and the same functions in EC2 in your data center that you do inside of inside of ours. And it's I don't like that term. It helps you move to an OpEx versus CapEx model for consuming infrastructure, right? Because now I'm not buying a bunch of hardware that's going to sit there and depreciate. I'm going to buy a service that's going to be delivered by AWS. So when you consume Outposts for the term that you decide to consume it for, it's yours. When you're done with it, you give it back to us, right? There's no capital asset that you have to depreciate and dispose of at the end of its life cycle. And then we're going to give you an option as well as you start adding capacity to your Outposts. Not only do you have what you've initially selected, but as we add new instance families, and I'll talk about which ones we're going to start with at GA, as you add new instance families to your Outpost, you can continue to grow it, right? So if we release the C6 or the C7 or whatever comes after it, you can actually augment your existing Outpost with that new technology automatically without having to repurchase a whole new infrastructure and start all over again. Some of the different use cases that we're talking with customers about, again, manufacturing automation, so that idea of I have machines generating lots of data, I want to do analytics on that information so that I can either get performance statistics or I can somehow control and optimize or protect my workflow going on in my factory. So using cloud-based services to design and manage that software and then deploy it into the factory right next to the machines for the minimal latency possible. Real-time inference applications, so imagine any number of streams of data from sensors or antennas or social media or whatever it is that you can bring in to a local location, right, where you have infrastructure there that can run high-speed inference operations to make immediate decisions about something that's going on in the area. Think about things like, like here you see like self-driving vehicles or anything where you could think of where I need to have AI and ML locally. And then again, you can use SageMaker, ECS, Elasticache, all running on top of the Outpost to do that inference, but keep this large corpus of information in the cloud to do your training, right? So that way you're not maintaining this huge store of data everywhere you want to do inference and do training, but at the same time, you have the ability to train in the cloud and then immediately deploy that model to anywhere you have an Outpost running. Healthcare, so helping make better patient care decisions much more rapidly. Think about things like machine learning algorithms for image processing. So as soon as I come out of the tube in the MRI, the Outpost is instantly analyzing all of that information and providing a result, within a few milliseconds versus the cloud round trip. or I can connect it directly to medical diagnostic equipment inside of my facility, or I could have electronic medical records analysis going against the EMR systems that are deployed next to the Outpost. Sometimes going to and from the cloud is just not fast enough for these kind of patient care decisions. So this optimizes that as well. We have a lot of customers that look at content generation and delivery, whether that's video game companies, streaming media. In the public sector space, you can imagine there's a lot of people looking at a lot of things around the globe. How do we deploy this infrastructure, sometimes in places where there just isn't a cloud within a reasonable distance, but we need to be able to look at this imagery, at this video for public safety reasons or other purposes. So that's another potential solution for Outposts. And then last but not least is cloud migration, right? So as I'm moving to the cloud, I need to understand how to operate and maintain things, but as infrastructure professionals, we all realize how tightly coupled things really can be, right? You have technical debt, you've got off-the-shelf software that has been put together over the years, and it's hard for me to fracture these things to move them to the cloud right away. So I can take advantage of AWS Outposts, put what I can there, have a common operational framework, common security framework, and still function on premises as I need to. So 2 options available to you. So the first one is the native EC2 AWS option, where it's pretty much exactly the same as EC2 running in the cloud. Same APIs, same services you could imagine, EC2 and EBS, and we'll be adding support very quickly after launch for things like relational database service, Elastic Container Service, Elastic Kubernetes Service, Elastic MapReduce, and SageMaker, right? So imagine having the ability to get graphics optimized instances in your facility to talk to the large data sets you have and leverage SageMaker to enable data scientists to train machine learning models rapidly on that information. The other option that we're looking at as well is we have this great partnership with VMware, where VMware operates and manages VMware clusters inside of AWS data centers, right? So it's actually a fully managed VMware Cloud Foundation suite running VMware ESX, vCenter, NSX, the whole suite of applications that are a part of running a VMware infrastructure. And we run that in our facilities, and that's managed for you by VMware. So patching, monitoring, updates, all that's taken care of as a managed service. So what we've done in partnership with them is extended that into the Outposts, so you can bring that same model of managing a VMware infrastructure into your facility as well. So VMware APIs, if you've got a lot of experience with VMware, if you've got a lot of automation, you're using a lot of VMware's management tools, you can get the same managed service of VMware in your facility, but you don't have to, and as well as in the cloud, right? So you get that choice between the two depending on your workload. There's some workloads that fit very well in VMware, there's some that fit very well in native AWS, and you can mix and match if you needed to. So lots of options there. Getting started, just like everything else we do, you start in the console. All right, you're gonna go in the AWS console, and you're going to order, you're going to connect it up to your local network, right? Standard data center requirements. And then once you're up and running and connected to our control plane, you launch just like you do anywhere else. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to pick your desired site. Where are you going to run this thing, right? We'll have some more data out there on what we're going to require from a floor footprint and power perspective here in a second. But you'll pick what kind of, we're going to have a bunch of SKUs for you to actually choose from. At launch, we're planning on M5 instances, the C5 compute optimized family, memory optimized, graphics optimized, and the i3 enhanced networking very soon after that. And we're going to keep adding to that as customers ask us for stuff. We've had conversations all week about different instance types, so we're really excited to see what else people are going to want to build with. And then we'll have the D series of locally optimized instance storage as well, plus GP2 EBS volumes, right? So exactly what you'll get with these instance families in the cloud will be available in your data center. As the process starts to move through build and delivery, you'll actually customize a schedule for installation and logical configuration. Our team's going to deliver a 42U rack or many 42U racks, depending on the size of the Outpost you select. And there's standard racks that will go in your facility. We're going to have a fully integrated top-of-rack switches with 10, 40, and 100 gig uplinks. So whatever you need to go up to your network based on your workload, we'll have that available to you. And then single phase or 3-phase power, right? So depending on the amount of compute you order and the density that you can support, that kind of influences the amount of Outpost racks you can have in a given data center. So those are all things you can work with solutions architects with as you're sizing and getting ready to order your actual outposts. Once you create the outpost, the next thing you're going to do is you're actually going to create a subnet for it. So in a VPC, inside of your AWS console, you're going to create a subnet that you will then be able to associate Outpost workloads with. So when I launch an EC2 instance, what it's actually going to look like is this. So I have my availability zone running inside the region. So we'll say GovCloud West, right, which is where I spend most of my time. And I'll have an AZ in GovCloud West that has a bunch of subnets. I'll then have my outposts that have their own subnets associated with them as well. So when I go in the console to launch something, what I'll actually see is I'll see a list of subnets just like I'm used to, and there will be certain ones that are tagged slightly differently that tell me that I'm going to deploy to an outpost. Each outpost contains is self-contained with those subnets. So if you're not familiar with that concept, right, that's kind of a single layer 2 domain. So I'm not replicating traffic back and forth between the cloud unless I specifically want to. By default, it's all going to be encapsulated inside of that subnet. If that makes sense. If you want to talk to the services we still have in the region, there are certain things that we're still going to be cloud-based, like S3, for example. You might be in an environment where connecting directly to the internet might not be possible, but you have a direct connection to AWS. You can actually take advantage of a service we call private link or interface endpoints, and you can set up these. Basically, what they are is these little network interfaces that have an IP address and provide you with the connectivity back to our service endpoints for things like S3, KMS, CloudTrail, CloudWatch, anything that we support an interface endpoint with. You can use that so that when you create an EC2 instance inside of your outpost, you'll be able to talk to the cloud services without having to go outside of your network out to the internet. You'll cross over your direct connector, your VPN to us, and you'll be able to talk directly to those things like DynamoDB or S3, so on and so forth. This is kind of a high-level list of some of the stuff we're really targeting either at launch or very shortly after launch. Again, EC2, EBS, VPC, those are the basics that you'll see there at general availability, but really shortly after that, EKS, ECS, RDS, FSX for Lustre and Windows, right? So you have that managed Windows-based file system that you could potentially use. Caching tools like Elasticache, where you have Redis and Elasticache for key value storage for state persistence. Lots of different things that you can use to build on and very, very quickly talk to things inside of your data center without having that round trip latency to the cloud. Just kind of reiterating again, all of these things are going to work with the Outpost, right? This is EC2. It's just running in your facility. So if I want to auto-scale, as long as I have enough capacity, EC2 will auto-scale inside of the Outpost. Right? There is a level of capacity management that you kind of have to start thinking about because there's only so many racks of servers you're going to want to install in your data center initially, but you have access to that. You have access to CloudFormation, CloudTrail, Beanstalk, anything you can orchestrate with an EC2 API, you'll be able to use inside of an Outpost. So a lot of people ask me, so does that mean if I have an Outpost that all of my stuff has to go back to the cloud and then come back to the Outpost? The answer to that is no. That would kind of defeat the purpose. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to show you how we can use this new concept we're creating. We'll call it a local gateway. And what a local gateway is very similar, if you're familiar, if you've worked with VPC before, we have route tables, right? And a route table says, I have traffic from this subnet, and I want it to go to this destination. So the default, in your default VPC, when you create an AWS account, is to go to an internet gateway. If I want to go to a private network, I create something called a virtual private gateway. And each network that I have defined in my VPC, I can route those according to that destination. So we're adding a new construct called the local gateway, which will be connected from your VPCs to your local network. So when you're creating a route table inside of the cloud, what you're actually going to be able to do is target anything that's a destined for the subnets that are inside of your Outpost will be targeted to this local gateway construct that's connected to the VPC inside of the Outpost. And this way, you'll be able to exchange routing information with your local network that's in, that upstream from the Outpost, north of the Outpost, and all of the traffic going in from your local network to the instances running inside of AWS Outposts will flow through this. So when you're creating your route tables in the console, this is how you define inside of a VPC which traffic goes to the Outpost and how it gets there. right? So hopefully that makes sense. Again, I'll be outside after if you want to walk through this diagram a little bit more. It's a little bit complicated. Operations and maintenance. So these are operated as part of our region. So our control plane is monitoring hardware. When we push patches, we send them over to you, and we do the updates the exact same way that we do it today. So if there's a patch and it doesn't require any disruption, we just take care of it, which is the majority of the time. If for any reason there was any kind of an issue where it required the Outpost servers to be rebooted, it would be the same as in a region, which is very, very rare, and we have notification processes for that. Full visibility control, so everything that we monitor today via CloudWatch, all of those metrics that you're able to look at for instance health and server health, those will be available to you the same way. Fast and easy replacements for upgrade and maintenance. That means we're going to basically take care of everything in very large field replaceable units, right? We are trying to concierge this as a service to you. We don't want it to be you maintaining hardware. We want it to be you running EC2 in your data center. So we're going to take care of all of that, and we're going to be your single point of support. So you'll call us, we'll come out, we'll take care of it. Some of the prereqs, so very standard, data center space and power. Think, three-phase power, a network connection to an AWS region. So we prefer direct connect because that's the lowest latency, the highest service availability, right? It's a private circuit back to us, but you can use, think about a 1 gigabit per second VPN connection is what we would need to do the control plane connection back to AWS. We aren't designed to work disconnected. That's not the use case that we're targeting. The Outpost will continue to function were you to lose this connection to us, but ultimately we would need that connection to be restored in order to function normally. Regions and availability, so the actual availability of which regions we're going to deploy in and when, that's really going to get decided closer to GA, which is second half of this year. You can deploy this at any data center or co-location space that you can think of, anywhere where you can put a 42U rack and support it safely, where you can get power and network to it, it'll run there. That's really the only requirements we have. We'll have a little bit more on cooling and thermal loads and all that other stuff once we get a little closer to availability. So kind of to summarize, I moved through this a little quickly, but that need for low latency applications, we really are trying to address that problem with Outposts. We want to do that in a fashion that customers don't have to change their workflows. We just bring EC2 closer to them. We give them that same level of support. We don't have 3 different vendors involved in building and managing this. It's Amazon. It's an Amazon AWS service, and it's standardized. Right? These are servers and network infrastructure that we build, we bring on site, we install for you, and we operate from our cloud region versus something that is on you to manage in addition to your mission applications. So if you want to learn a little bit more, check out the website. Like I said, second half of this year is when we're anticipating GA. And that's all I've got. I'll be outside for a little bit if anybody wants to come chit chat. Thank you for your time, and please do the survey.